Shalom from Jerusalem. My name is Albert Veksler. I'm the director of Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, and we are here with answers for allies from our office in Jerusalem. Together with me is a great friend, Jeremy Smith. You are the coordinator, national coordinator for Ebenezer Operation Exodus.
That's right.
Thank you for being with us.
It's great to be with you. Great to be with you.
See, we are talking about the trauma that Israel has experienced since October 7. I mean, we have been accused of genocide, of all things, against the Palestinian people. I mean, it's just turning things just on top of its head. When we've been attacked, we've been murdered, raped. You cannot find the words. I'm at loss of words of how unjust such accusation can be. And yet we are facing such accusations while we are fighting for our existence, fighting for the peace of Israel. And I mean, think of also of more than 200,000 people that have been evacuated from their homes for 3 months. It's very hard to
and they have no
imagine.
idea when they're going back.
Exactly.
And so we work with some of those with Operation Exodus, and they are depressed, they are low. We have over 13 hotels now in Jerusalem with evacuated people. And they came actually with very little. They came very quickly, they came with very little. And so there's a good work to do for Christians, myself included, in helping them at this time. But for the North especially, they have no idea when they will get to go home. So they've lost their work, they're not in school. So it's a very difficult time at the moment.
I read that there are 9,000 IDF soldiers that have asked for psychological help. And your son is in the medical corps. They are the paramedics. And you have the first-hand, of course, experience of what it means that your son is in Gaza.
Yeah, I remember. It was October the 7th, and we just heard that something had gone down. It was 6:30 in the morning when the terrorists came out of Gaza into Israel, and it was just horror. It was just horrific what happened. And so this went off at 6:30, and at 10 o'clock, my son, he's not a reservist, he's in compulsory at the moment, he'd done his training, and he got a call that he was being picked up to go into that situation. And I remember the sirens went off, and all of us went towards the bomb shelter, and my son started going towards the bomb shelter, and then a realization went on, and we could see it, my wife and I could see it. So, now I was going to the bomb shelter to be safe, but now I'm being taken into whatever this situation is. And we didn't know at that point how bad, how awful it was. And off he went. I got a call, because a lot of the soldiers went, they had no equipment. They didn't have their guns because they were at home. And so it took 2 or 3 days for them to get the equipment. But I remember my son ringing me up saying, "Dad, I'm not sure what happens next. In the next 10 minutes, I'm doing something, but I don't have a helmet, I don't have a gun, I don't have anything." And so he walked into this situation really initially blind at the beginning. And it took Israel a number of hours to actually get their act together and figure out what had gone on. It took them days to get the equipment to protect. They didn't even have a body armor or anything. And so it took them days to get that sorted out. And of course, we knew nothing of what was going on.
People are so baffled. I mean, my friends are telling me it's impossible. They're saying it's impossible that Israel was taken by surprise. And yet we were.
Yeah, I think we were. I mean, who knows? I don't know the ins and outs of this. It could have been that we weren't expecting something so severe as what happened, and so horrific. Yeah, it's a good question, and I think we will look forward to hearing the answer as time goes on as to why we were so open. But the difference is, in a lot of army situations, like in England, you fight. If your soldiers fight, they fight over there. So they're in another country. They're not at the moment fighting in England or America. They fight over there. But Israel, it came into our lives. It came into our homes, and at that time, I don't know how it was done, but a lot of phone calls were coming out, basically terrorist phone calls. And so my daughter was in a house with her best friend and her best friend's husband, and the phone rang, and it was a phone call saying basically, the terrorists are coming, get out of your house. And this was in the middle of Jerusalem. And the fear that was created, they were desperate to get out of their house, they thought it was coming. And so not only did we have this situation going on with Hamas next to the border, but we had terrorist phone calls coming into the land. Our land was invaded. And so as Israelis, we were all very much traumatized, myself included. And it's a funny story, but I was listening to a professor, an Israeli professor on trauma, who dealt with trauma for 40 odd years. And he said the way you know somebody is traumatized is basically when they meet somebody and they start a conversation, if within 5 minutes they turn to the trauma, you know they're traumatized. And I listened to myself, and it was absolutely right. I was sharing with people, and I found myself talking about the trauma within 5 minutes. And so if it's like that for me, it's basically like that for everyone. And so we are traumatized. We will come through, and I believe fully that God has our back, and he will help us through this process. But we are traumatized. And I remember a reporter, he was talking to a soldier in Gaza, and he said, is this revenge? Are you doing this for revenge? And the soldier looked at him and said, no. He says, is this wrath? And the soldier said, no. And he said, basically, we will not do this again. I'm not angry. It's not revenge, but we will not do this again. And that's why the fight with Hamas has to fulfill itself. We have to deal with Hamas so that it never happens again. And that's what we're in.
So you had a story with your son.
Yeah, my son was telling me they were just, they'd come out of Gaza, they were still on the base, and they had a counselor come and talk to them. And of course these are young men, and at 20 you don't think about going to counseling or all this, no matter what you walk through. And she was talking, and they were kind of listening and kind of not listening, and all of a sudden this drone went above their head. And they didn't know if it was Israeli or from Hamas, and of course the drones are dangerous because they dropped a bomb. But within a second or so, every soldier had got their gun and they were pointing it up at this drone. And at which point they all looked at each other and they realized how much they'd been affected by all that they had been through. And so they put their guns down, and he said, you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody now was listening to the counselor because they realized how traumatized they were. And so this is what we're going to have to recover from. And they are young men, young women, so they tend not to work through the issues at this point, but a time will come when they will have to heal up from what they have been through. And I've heard little bits from my son, but I can say he's gone through hell. And none of them would have chosen this. Many years ago I had a reporter come with a cameraman, and he was interviewing me, and he kept trying to get me to say that the Israel Defense Force is some kind of a monster, like we are as bad as maybe the SS from Germany or whatever. And I kept telling him, that the monster that you're calling, these are our kids. This is not a monster. This is our children, and it's made up of our children. We do compulsory service, so none of these kids, these children, these grown-ups or whatever, want to be in this situation. Every one of them would rather be at home or continuing with his work or continuing with his studies. But all of them recognize that we have to deal with this evil that is Hamas. And so that's what they're doing.
Well, for some reason the world thinks so differently. They feel that we need to come to a ceasefire and stop the fighting and bring the armies out, and it's a very different view they have. For some reason they have compassion on Hamas, these murderous and horrible organization, and no compassion on the Jews.
It's a bizarre thing, isn't it? But you've got wars going on with Turkey and
Russia,
they're attacking
Ukraine.
Russia, Ukraine. You've got all these other wars, and nobody says a word. But the moment Israel responds, it has to be a spiritual thing. It has to be a spiritual thing.
No Jews, no news.
No Jews, no news, which is what we're hearing. But we have to win this battle, and I think we have to win it. And it sounds like a cliche, but for the rest of the world, because we have to beat terrorism. And now I think, as well as the anti-Semitism that's been unleashed around the world, we've got one or two governments standing up against the Muslim, against the terrorist infrastructure that's in their countries, and they have a big battle on their hands, I think. But yes, so we have to. Absolutely.
Think of Europe. I mean, they
Absolutely.
have no clue what is going on in their backyards.
No, and unfortunately what we've seen over this period is that has been unleashed, you know, with the hundreds of thousands in rallies, I mean, frightening rallies. Violent rallies around the world happening out of this event.
7,557 demonstrations that I read that were against Israel, while there were 607 for Israel.
It's just amazing, isn't it? But thank God, God is on our side, and you know, I believe the Jews will return. You know, we've talked about it before. I believe they'll return, and I believe this will be part of what brings them back. But we have a lot of traumatized people in the land. We have. A friend of mine's wife is a doctor, and she says she has given out so many tranquilizers. We have people who are not sleeping. This is a very big issue. And like I said, we will come through it, but it will take time.
You mentioned you met with 2 American soldiers recently.
Yes, I met them last night. They're wonderful Christian young men who have been, one of them had been through Iraq. I'm not sure about both of them. They'd been to, he was a gunner on a helicopter, and he was traumatized by what he dealt with. And he didn't realize, and he came back, and both of them were in a difficult situation, and they had to work through the trauma that they experienced. And so they're here, these are Christian guys, part of a ministry, who are here to help the IDF soldiers recover. So any help we can get is wonderful. And, you know, it was a few years back in Israel, they knew that the time would come when they would have to deal with big things, and they wouldn't have enough people. And I think this is one of those times where they realize that actually they are overwhelmed by the need. And so when we get Christian volunteers coming, you know, these soldiers are great, they come to help. We have Christians coming and working on farms. We had cowboys working on farms up north. You know, the more help we can get to get through this process, I think the better. So
we have a group here right now from Italy that have come to help with the soup kitchen here near to our office in Jerusalem, and it's so heartwarming to see how people just leave behind all what they were doing to give a week for Jerusalem, to give some time of theirs, which they could, you know, spend in some nice place in a vacation, and yet they prefer to come and help the Jewish people, help Israel in this difficult time.
I think it's wonderful, you know, because the history of Christian-Jewish relations is not good on the Christian side. We've seen a lot of things from the Crusades, and it's not all. It's maybe done in the name of Christ, but it's not Christian. So this is a way that the Christians can actually reverse that and help their brothers and sisters. And may we have more people coming to do that. I know of a soup kitchen up in Kiryat Shmona. 90% of the people up north have been evacuated, but they are feeding 500 soldiers. And they're doing that. And I think the more we can bless these people doing work in very difficult circumstances, I think it's great for Christians. I think it's what we should be doing.
Well, we should call our viewers to join. And of course, if you can't come, nobody would hold it against you, I understand. But you can pray. You can absolutely pray. You can pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You can pray for the well-being of our soldiers. You can pray for the restoration of those who have this post-traumatic disorders. And I mean, we have many. And of course, I'm not forgetting those in Gaza. No, I'm not forgetting those. We should pray for them as well. But we should be absolutely sure that this very source of evil, like Jeremy just said, Hamas, has to be dealt with. We just cannot continue. We cannot even think of coexisting with a murderer's neighbor that have claimed and declared it once and once again, time again, that their goal is to annihilate, kill all the Jews, take over Jerusalem and then the rest of the world. So how can you negotiate? Can you go to halfways with a murderer? What's the result? I mean, it's just insane what is offered to Israel. I mean, no reasonable person
No,
can accept such
absolutely.
terms.
And we've lived with it for over 20 years. And it's just come, and we've got rockets day by day, rockets coming in. And I don't know how many thousands of rockets have come our way. So this isn't a new thing. It was new in the event of October 7th, but
Well,
actually it's been going on for
13,500 rockets from October 7.
Yeah.
So this is just this this term, not to count the thousands of rockets that have come throughout the years. I mean, you've experienced it firsthand.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You live pretty close.
Yeah, I'm about 50 minutes. We've had rockets over this last few months. We've had rockets coming over our heads. We've had explosions around us. So yes, it's been a very challenging time. It's not over yet, unfortunately.
We need to pray. We
need
need to pray, and we need your prayers to help strengthen and encourage the people of Israel during this difficult time of trial. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for praying for the peace of Jerusalem, because remember, those who love Jerusalem will prosper, and those who love and bless the seed of Abraham, they will be blessed.